Welcome to the Psychotherapy Central podcast, where we discuss love, attachment, and healing from trauma. A place where you can gain the knowledge, tools, and wisdom to help you build secure, flourishing relationships. I'm your host, clinical psychotherapist and couples therapist, Jennifer Nurick. Welcome back to Psychotherapy Central, where we dive deep into the world of attachment, healing, and creating secure, meaningful relationships. I'm your host, Jennifer Nurick, clinical psychotherapist, author of Heal Your Anxious Attachment, and someone deeply passionate about helping people break free from old patterns and build healthier connections with themselves and others. That is my life work and my passion. In today's episode, we're exploring a topic that often gets misunderstood: avoidant attachment. Specifically, what avoidant individuals really need, even when they struggle to ask for it. Now, avoidantly attached people are often seen as independent, distant, emotionally unavailable. But what's happening underneath those behaviors is often a different story. Avoidants have deep emotional needs just like everyone else. But early life experiences have taught them that it's safer to shut those needs down, to rely only on themselves, and to keep emotional distance to avoid pain or rejection. When you look at it through that lens, their behavior is adaptive. It has kept them safe. So today we're going to unpack what avoidant attachment feels like from the inside, the core emotional needs avoidants often carry but may struggle to express or even acknowledge, and how healing begins when we recognize, validate, and honor these needs with compassion and not shame. Whether you're avoidantly attached yourself, you love someone who is, like me, or simply want to understand attachment more deeply, this episode is for you. We'll also talk about how avoidance can take steps towards healthier relationships and how partners can support this journey in a way that feels safe and respectful and not critical and shaming. As always, I intend for this to be a safe, non-judgmental space. We're here to understand, to be curious, and to open the door to healing step by step. So let's get started. What avoidants secretly long for. Avoidantly attached individuals often appear self-sufficient, independent, and detached. But I can tell you from many years of experience as a therapist with avoidance systems that beneath that calm control surface are very real human needs. These needs are often buried under protective strategies that were formed in childhood, and even the avoidant person themselves might not fully recognize or understand those needs. So let's explore together some of the key needs avoidants have, but they often will struggle to express. Number one, emotional safety without pressure. Avoidants want to feel emotionally safe in relationships, just like everyone else. But for them, emotional safety often means not being pressured to open up quickly or in ways that they are not ready for. They crave an environment where their pace is respected, where there is space to breathe, to think, and come forward when they're ready. They really need to feel like they won't be overwhelmed or consumed by someone else's emotional needs. That can be because they have very little emotional literacy. They haven't had a lot of exposure to emotion. Some family systems have very little, I think of it as the liquid of emotion that runs through a family system. So they've kind of grown up on almost like a dry cracker and they don't know what it's all about. Or there has been so much emotional overwhelm that they've had to shut down, and they are concerned that they will be flooded by somebody else's emotion. It can be either way. Second thing that avoidants need but struggle to express. This is a deep need for acceptance for who they are, not who they should be. So they have this deep desire to be loved for who they are and can be incredibly sensitive to feedback. Now, this is often because they were given very little positive feedback in the past. They will often carry shame around their discomfort with intimacy and may feel like they're failing in relationships, which can be super difficult, especially if they're very successful in the business world. They're very successful in the sports world. They can feel like, how can I be so successful over here and be absolutely killing it? But then over here in my relationship, I'm getting feedback from my partner that I shut down, that I'm not available, and they can really feel like they're failing. This makes my heart activate. Because I've heard this a lot in the therapy space with some of my clients. There can be a very deep pain around this. And getting used to swimming in that watery emotion isn't something that happens overnight, and it's something that we do I do in my practice anyway, and my therapists who work with me, we do it incrementally. Through the therapeutic process, more and more. It's like you don't throw somebody into the deep end of the pool when they can't swim. We just start with paddling, and then we go out a bit further and we get used to what it feels like to have the water around our knees and around the thighs, and we get in a bit deeper and we feel it suddenly around the torso, and then before you know it, you're starting to swim, but you've got armbands on, and so you're floating, and it can feel a bit unsafe with all this emotional with connecting with the emotions inside, but also holding emotions relationally. So I'm just describing here part of the therapeutic process, which happens one-on-one with a therapist, especially one who's trained in attachment. So we've got armbands on first, and then slowly we take the armbands off, but still the therapist is there, ready to reach out, to grab, and then eventually the person is off swimming on their own. And then what happens, and I've seen this time and time again in my own practice, and it brings me so much joy, is eventually there's another swimmer. And then they're off swimming together, and then when they need somebody to reach out for, their partner is there to reach out as that secure other. And that is the therapeutic process. That is the process that I teach through all of my courses. That is the goal of all of my work, and it is absolutely achievable. Okay, I went off on a bit of a tangent there. I'm going to bring myself back. So they want to be accepted for who they are, not who they should be. And they can often carry the shame around their own discomfort with intimacy and feel like they're failing. Connection is much easier when they feel accepted and when they're given positive feedback about what they're doing that feels good to you. Let me give you an example. Let's say I have a doctor's appointment and my partner calls me half an hour after the doctor's appointment and says, "Hey Jen, just calling to check in and see how your doctor's appointment was." That feels really lovely in my heart. I feel cared for. I'm being thought about. My internal working model of the other person starts to shift into, there are people around me who are thinking about me, who care about me, and are caring about my emotional well-being. So I might just say to my partner later, "Thank you so much for calling. That made me feel really cared about and loved by you, and that felt warm in my heart." Yep. So usually I'll give direct feedback, and I usually give some kind of body reference, because that helps, especially with avoidance, really bringing on that body connection, because a lot of our felt senses exist in the body. Well, all of them, felt senses exist in the body. You'll be surprised how quickly your avoidant partner responds to praise. And remember, many people can go days or weeks in our culture without any praise at all, without anyone noticing their efforts. Just as an example, think about someone you love, an adult, and when was the last time you gave them some praise? When was the last time you were given any praise? So the key point here is that when avoidants feel accepted and not judged, they're more likely to choose to open up. The third thing that avoidants need but struggle to express is the need for connection. And this, I want to stress, is a biologically imprinted necessity for connection. Yeah, but they like to feel in control of when and how that connection happens. They will often feel the safest when intimacy unfolds slowly through shared activities, quality time, and not necessarily through deep, meaningful, emotional talk straight away. You might need to build up to that slowly. Everybody's a bit different, and there is a sensing and an attunement that happens in the moment relationally. But just as an example, an avoidant might feel more connected during a walk together, walking alongside each other, or even working on a project sort of side by side, than having a head-on, heart-to-heart conversation. And if you're in relationship with avoidant, you might know that those few words, "I need to talk to you," can be terrifying for that more avoidant style. Yep. The fourth need that avoidants have is freedom and autonomy within connection. Now, this is something that secure relationships have. They have both closeness and space. There is a balance. And avoidants need this to thrive in their relationships because they fear being engulfed or trapped. They need reassurance that being close doesn't mean that they're going to lose themselves. So we're looking for this real balance of autonomy and closeness. And then you will find that your partner will be more likely to engage emotionally. The next thing is reliability and consistency, because it creates a feeling of safety for all the attachment styles. So while avoidants might act like they don't need anyone, and that might be what they tell themselves because it keeps them safe, avoidants do like consistent, predictable behavior. They love a partner who shows up consistently and feels stable within themselves. If they feel like their partner is too emotionally dependent on them, it can feel scary and like they're out of their depth, and this kind of panic response or a blocking response can come up. Generally, avoidants dislike emotional volatility. They don't know what to do with it, and they will often either try to fix it or they'll feel overwhelmed and they'll shut down and withdraw. So reliability and consistency builds trust over time. Now, that's not saying that you can't ever become emotionally dysregulated, right? Everybody in relationship at some point, if you are human, is going to get triggered, and there's going to be some emotional responses. However, the way that you handle that and the way that you debrief that, the way that you self-care within that has a huge impact on your relationship. And if you do tend towards a lot of dysregulation, a lot of emotional volatility, check out my book, Heal Your Anxious Attachment. Lots of tools and tips in there, and to work relationally with the avoidant anxious dynamic. So for someone with the avoidant attachment, intimacy isn't about revealing every detail. And in fact, Esther Perel, she's one of the most famous relationship therapists. If you haven't ever heard of her, go check her out, Esther Perel. She talks about oversharing that happens in many relationships. And she says that this can actually kill some of the novelty, some of the curiosity, some of the mystery. She says it in her lovely accent, some of the mystery of relationships. That we don't need to share every detail with our partner, and that in order to keep the attraction, to keep the mystery, that it can be good to not share everything. And so I will often mentor clients around having other people that you're very emotionally close to, especially if you tend more towards the anxious style. It's very supportive to have different people we can go to for different things and different connections, rather than just relying on our partner. Number 6 is to be understood, this deep need to be understood, but without words. Avoidants can often struggle to articulate their emotional needs, especially in moments of stress, especially because their default parts come in to protect. Their brain, I've heard many avoidant people say to me, "Jen, my brain gets scrambled. I can't even follow the conversation." Yep. And that is a kind of trauma response when that happens. Yeah. You want to be looking at working with that with a trauma therapist. Non-verbal connection is things like gentle gestures, patience, presence. They deeply appreciate partners who really get them without requiring lots of verbal reassurance, which can be tricky with avoidant partners because often they will make even secure partners feel a bit anxious and need a bit more verbal reassurance. But remember, the reassurance can come in lots of different ways. You might have an avoidant who quite likes to hold hands. And so it might be not a lot of words from your avoidant, but you might get a lot of hand holding. You might not get a lot of words, but you might get a lot of acts of service. Yeah, that's always something interesting to explore as a couple, the 5 love languages. I'll put the link to that in the show notes. Something else that avoidants need but can struggle to express is the need for validation. Validation is something I talk a lot about in my courses. I think of it as this like golden love juice that runs through relationships. Avoidants need to feel that their thoughts, boundaries, and emotions are valid. This is super important because for all of the insecure attachment styles growing up, you often didn't receive validation for your inner world, which has led you to suppress needs, and for the avoidance style, most needs, in order to feel strong and self-reliant. Now, validation can help you feel seen, respected, and safe to exist as you are without needing to change to be loved. And I think that is so core because for most of us through childhood, we are given overt or covert messages that we need to change in order to be loved. We need to be better behaved. We need to be quieter. We need to be prettier. We need to be a better dancer in order to be loved. And so this validation is critical for all of the attachment styles. Okay, a question I get asked a lot is, avoidants have needs, Jen. So why do they struggle to express them? What's the problem? So there's a few reasons. One is a deep fear of dependence because their experience has been, I can't rely on the other to take care of me. When I express my needs, they are not always met. Sometimes I'm told, sometimes I'm shamed, sometimes I'm told off. So they have this deep fear of dependence, of losing autonomy or of being controlled. Number 2 is there can be a lot of shame around needing others due to this childhood conditioning. You should be able to do that yourself. Why are you crying about this? Why are you needing me? Yeah. There can also be a lack of emotional vocabulary or modeling in earlier life, like I was talking about earlier in the podcast about swimming. If you've never felt water around your legs, you've never felt water, let alone swam. Yep, so sometimes there is a need for an incremental building of this emotional language. I often call it building up of the emotional body, of this learning to swim. And in my experience, that is best done in a one-on-one therapeutic environment. And I also teach it through my courses. Before we wrap this session up, I really want to normalize needs for the avoidantly attached person. So I'm going to take a moment to speak directly to those with avoidant attachment tendencies, whether you've known this about yourself forever or you're just starting to realize it. Here's something that might feel radical at first, but it's absolutely true. You have needs, and those needs are valid. As I said before, emotionally attached people, you've often grown up in an environment where your emotional needs weren't acknowledged, respected, or met. Maybe you learned early that it was safer to rely on yourself than needing others and being disappointed, rejected, shamed, or punished or hurt. Over time, this can lead to a belief that needing anything from anyone is weak or dangerous, so I will rely on myself. And often the child will then be praised for that. They're so self-reliant. They can just take care of themselves. They're such a good girl or boy. But here's the truth. All humans have a need for connection, for closeness, for support. And having those needs doesn't make you needy, it makes you human. So you don't have to erase your needs to be lovable. You don't have to be perfectly self-sufficient to be worthy of care and love. And wanting space and wanting connection are not mutually exclusive. You can hold both. And that is what you're looking for, aiming for in your beautiful relationship. The fear of being overwhelmed, losing yourself in relationship is a real fear. It deserves compassion. But so does your quiet and tender longing for someone to truly see you, to be accepted, to stand by you, and to feel deeply loved. Know that you are absolutely lovable, and inside you are tender, and you have this whole emotional world. And I would love for you to be in a relationship with a therapist, with another person, where you can gently, in your own pacing, your own time, get more in contact with that inner environment, get more comfortable with it. So as you begin to recognize and honor your own needs without judgment, without shaming yourself, you will start to create a life where you can feel safe and connected. You can have closeness without losing yourself. You can receive love and support without feeling like it's a threat. Just know that your needs are not too much. Your needs are not wrong. Your needs matter, and so do you. To sum up this segment, avoidants want love, connection, and intimacy, just like everyone else. But their protective strategies, which come from their early experiences, often mask these needs, often from themselves as well as from others. And healing begins when they feel safe enough to recognize these longings, and relationships thrive when partners meet them with patience, acceptance, and compassionate understanding. So where is the healing and growth for avoidance? I've touched on this a few times through the podcast. I've given you some analogies, some like outlines of maps, but let's just get a few dot points in here. Building self-awareness is essential, right? While we're doing things that we don't even know that we're doing, we can't work on it. So we have to be brave enough to start to look within. If I'm getting a lot of feedback that I'm cold, that I feel distant, that people can't connect with me, I usually say after 3 pieces of feedback, especially from 3 different people, I have to start to think, maybe there's something about me in here and it's not just the fault of the other person. Maybe there's a smidgen of truth in here and there's something for me to get curious about. So how do you build self-awareness? Through personal development courses like the ones that I teach, books, compassionately noticing moments when you pull away and becoming more curious about your behaviors. Another is developing a tolerance for intimacy through small, safe steps. And that might just be naming when you're triggered in the moment rather than leaving the house. Yeah, just even naming, I can feel myself shutting down and I really don't want to shut down, so I just need a moment. With a therapist, learning to be vulnerable, to have new kinds of conversations in a safe space, to experience a different reaction to your emotions, to unpack your own reaction to your own emotions. A bit of metacognition, lots of things, beautiful things can happen with a therapist. The power of parts work, really getting to know your own protective system, the parts that come in that shut you down when you don't want to get shut down, the parts that block you from your own needs. In the work that I do, we really get to meet these protective parts, but with a lot of compassion, with a lot of heart. So you're also building that capacity for inner self-compassion. So if you're listening to this and you have a partner with avoidant attachment, how do you support them? My top tips are: be patient, be consistent, be loving and open about the impact of certain behaviors on you, but give that feedback in a really loving way. It's not we have to talk about your behavior. It might sound more like, I noticed you pull back during that moment when we were talking about that email, and I just wondered there what happened for you. Did you feel that, or is that just me? Yeah, very different way to start that conversation. And we know through the research, the way that you start a conversation will predict the outcome of the conversation. So I hope you've enjoyed that episode. I've really enjoyed sharing that with you. In today's episode, we have explored the often hidden emotional world of those elusive avoidant attachment people. We've highlighted that avoidants do have deep needs for emotional safety, acceptance, connection, autonomy, consistency, non-verbal understanding, and maybe most importantly, validation. But they often struggle to express them because of their early life experiences that taught them to rely only on themselves and to not be able to trust the people around them. We have normalized these needs. We have really unpacked that needs do not make someone weak, it makes them human, and that healing begins when avoidants recognize and honor their needs with compassion. And with self-awareness, small steps towards intimacy, asking for support, that avoidants can move towards deeper connection. I've seen it over and over again in my practice. So partners can help by being patient, consistent, and emotionally steady. So if you'd like a bit more support with this, you might like to pick up my book, Heal Your Anxious Attachment. It's available from all major book retailers. I wrote it with New Harbinger, published by New Harbinger. Especially the second part of the book has lots of tips for the avoidant, anxious dynamic, but it's so helpful for anyone who has an insecure attachment style. Please DM me to ask your questions. Please drop your comments in the comments section. Please suggest topics for future videos. I love to hear that. Please do rate, review, subscribe, hit the bell if you're on YouTube, and then you'll know when the next video comes out. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being interested in this. It is one of my core beliefs that the more of this work we do, the more of this inner relational work, the more of this outer relational work we do as couples, as families, as businesses, that we are working on the atoms that create societies, that create our structures. And so change can powerfully happen from within you. So thank you for doing this work with me. It's one of the big reasons that I'm here. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Thank you for joining me on this episode. If you want to learn more about all things love, attachment, and trauma, I'd love to connect with you on Instagram at psychotherapy.central or visit my website at psychotherapycentral.health. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave a review and a 5-star rating. Your support means a lot, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.